All righty, the clock on the pew says 9:01, which actually is probably about 9:03. I didn't bring my phone up. I left it back in the back, so it's probably about 9:03 AT&T time. So we will go ahead and get ready to get started. Prayer list this morning. Gary Logan had his back surgery. Of course, he was here last week, so I think Gary's doing pretty well. He's been back. Ooh. Okay. Okay. So Gary had to go back in for some, I guess, follow-up work and is back home again. Let's see, Ravenel Morris home. Betty Hayes has surgery coming up in less than 2 weeks. Melissa Wadlington's mother passed away. So. Yes, I saw that the other day. So Kelsey Chadwick and her husband, Kelsey passed away. She was doing a presentation or? Yeah, it was in the middle. So. Anybody else? It's a holiday weekend. A lot of people on the road this weekend. A lot of people out this weekend. So. I don't know about anybody else. It feels weird that Labor Day is actually on the first day of September. So it feels like it ought to be next Monday, not this Monday. But anybody else? Jay, you're in here with us this morning. Would you lead us in a prayer? Thanks, sir. All right, so last week we wrapped up Galatians, and I was trying to figure out, let's figure out something to do next. And I thought, we did a book study. Let's go back to a topical one. And something triggered, and I came up with, here's a short topic. And when I told Teresa Wednesday night about what I was going to in the bulletin, I said, you won't have any trouble remembering, you won't have to write this one down. It's 3 letters. Why? One of the great short words that has a whole lot to it. Does it not? Little bitty word, but a lot going on. Of course, for those who have children, who deal with children, it is a very common word. I thought this was cute. Ask why, keeps asking why. Aaron, your girls ever do that? Well, but why? And why? Teachers ever get asked why? And of course, sometimes as we get older, we get asked why. But there are just a lot of things that why questions. Like why I want this clicker done. All right, so in why questions in life, there are some that are pretty humorous when you think about it, like, why does a round pizza come in a square box? How can you think about that one and you're like, yeah, that does. Why does round pizza come in a square box? And as Troy says, generally, you cut it in triangle pieces unless back when you were in elementary school and pizza came in squares. Or, why is it that people say they slept like a baby when babies wake up every 2 hours? Get a lot of laughing on that one. Or maybe, why is it called after dark when it's really after light? Now, there are humorous questions that we like to ask why about, but there are more in-depth questions too that we like to ask why about. Why are we here? And sometimes if you're being reflective, why am I here? Why? Or maybe this question, why should I be a good person? Maybe there are times it'd be more fun, more enjoyable if I weren't a good person and just did what I wanted, lived however I wanted. But why should I be a good person? Why do we die? Why do we die? Why do those we love about and care about, why do they die? Why? Why? Anybody got a why question of their own that they like, that just one of your big why questions that sticks with you? Yeah, there's one. Why did God make mosquitoes? Why did Noah go ahead and let them reside somewhere in the ark? Couldn't we just done away with those? There are a lot of why questions we all want answers to, aren't there? Some serious, some not so serious, but I think we could all build our own list of questions that we want the answer to why to. Why is there turbulence in the world? Why do bad things happen to good people? And of course, there's a whole book, Job has a lot of why in it. Why? There's just a lot we want to know why to. And as we get into this series, I thought there are a lot of pathways we can go. Some of the things we're going to look at over the next few weeks, and this is not the whole list, this is just part of the things we're going to look at, but why believe the Bible is the Word of God? Why do we believe that as opposed to it's just a collection of great writings and great books? Why believe in the resurrection? That is a core of our faith. Why believe in the resurrection? Why is there suffering and evil if there is a God? And when we are trying to teach others and lead others to Christ, this one's going to come up. People are going to want to know, okay, if God is there and He loves us and cares for us, why is there suffering and evil if there is a God? Why did someone walk into a school in Minneapolis, shoot through a window after they boarded the doors so the people could not get out? Why did someone shoot at children who were sitting there in a time of worship on a school day? There are a lot of why questions, and some are really tough and really hard to look at. Why should I believe in Jesus? We as Christians believe that He is God in flesh. He is the Son of God. Why should we believe? Why? You ever think God looks at us and sees the kids that we had on the graphic there? Because we're always asking Him, why, God? Why? So we're going to look at some why things. Some will be a little bit harder and more thoughtful, and some will just be sort of factual. The one we're going to look at today is more of a sort of a factual thing than a deep theological thing, although there's some deep theological things connected to it. But today we're going to look a little bit about why should I believe in God? Why should I believe in God? Are we here for a purpose? Did we get created? Or is this just one big accident? that happened. Turn with me a minute. Let's look at Acts 17. We're going to read a little bit here. As Paul is in Athens, and he's going to try to explain some things to a group here connected somewhat to this. Acts 17, beginning of verse 22. So Paul stood in the middle of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that you are extremely religious in every aspect. For as I was passing through and observing the objects of your worship, I even found an altar on which was inscribed to an unknown God. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by hands. Neither is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives everyone life and breath in all things. From one man he has made every nationality to live over the whole earth and has determined their appointed times and the boundaries of where they live. He did this so that they might seek God and perhaps they might reach out and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our own being, and even as some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Since then we are God's offspring, we shouldn't think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, an image fashioned by human art and imagination. Therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, God now commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has set a day when he is going to judge the world in righteousness by the man he has appointed. He has provided proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some began to ridicule him, but others said, "We'd like to hear from you again about this." So Paul left their presence. However, some people joined him and believed, including Dionysius the Areopagite, a woman named Damaris, and others with them. So Paul here, speaking in Athens, tries to explain, okay, here's the why. He's really trying to explain the why, and he meets them where they are. He sees by all their statues and the fact that they even have one to the unknown God that they are concerned about this. They sort of want to know, and they want to, by having one to the unknown God, they want to cover all their bases to make sure. So he tries to meet them here. And no, Paul does not attempt to prove the existence of God by using the law of Moses. He doesn't go back to the Old Testament and say, well, here's what. In Genesis, Moses wrote that God created the heavens and the earth, 7 days. He doesn't go back to the law. Now, why does he not go back to the law? Or back to the Old Testament? They're not Jewish. What would it have meant to them if he'd have gone back to the books of the law or the writings of the law? Nothing. It would have meant nothing to them. They had a lot of great writings already. So going back to that would have meant nothing to them. So he tries to go to where they stand and say, look, you're already here. Let me point out to you where we are, what it means. So he doesn't go back to prove the existence of God, but going back to the law of Moses, because to the Greeks it would have meant nothing. Those arguments wouldn't have been accepted by the Athenians. So he tries to get them where they are, so he has a common ground point with them. And why is this acting up today? All right, so in this, woohoo! All right, hold on. Technology is wonderful when it works, but when it goes haywire, all right, so in the same way today, we cannot prove the existence of God by using Scripture. Can we go to someone who doesn't believe in God, take this book, go to Genesis and say, here, believe in God because this says so? Is that going to work? Maybe. But I mean, really, we can't prove the existence of God by what's in there, by reading that text. Our faith is in God, and we believe and know it's true. But to someone in a similar situation to Paul, what Paul was encountering in Greece, if we go to someone completely with no religious background and we go to them and say, this book says so. Well, they might pull up a book and they'll say, well, this book says no. So we really can't prove the existence of God by using scriptures to someone who has no faith background. God has created the world, though, in such a way that we can see his existence through what he has created. We can believe in him because he's laid it out right there and shown us that he's there. Now, make sure this is not skipping ahead on me again. There is a choice to be made. As we look at this, we have a choice. People have a choice to make. The starting point is that you have to choose whether you believe in a creator or whether you believe everything just happened in a cosmic accident. That's where you have to start. There are two paths. When you go to the core of everything, you start at point A and say, it was either created or it just happened. There are no other possibilities. It's either an accident or it was a purposeful plan of an intelligent being. Can't be any other things. The theist, a person who believes in God, holds to the view that adequate evidence is available to prove conclusively that God exists. A person who believes in God says, look, just look around you. How can you believe not? Or how can you not believe? So, what caused one of the big questions of all is what caused the universe? What caused it? Why is it here? How did it get here? There are three possible answers as to what caused the universe. One, the universe is eternal. It always has existed. It always will exist. That one will get you a headache trying to think about it. You're laughing. Yeah, it will, won't it? If you try to think that the universe has always been, it's unfathomable that it was always here. So that's option one. Option two is the universe is not eternal. Rather, it created itself out of nothing. There are many people in the world today trying to convince us of this. It just happened. So that's option two. Option three is the universe is not eternal. It did not create itself out of nothing, but instead was created by something or someone outside of it and superior to it. In other words, everything that's around us, as far as you can go out into space and as far as you can go anywhere, somebody put it there. So those are your three options as it pertains to how the universe, how we are here, how everything is here. You've got those three choices as to how they happened. Now, if you're not believing in a creator, if you're a person who says, there is no God, that, this just happened, it just appeared, and it's going to be here, and it's been here for millions and billions and all of that years. If you're a person who does not believe in a creator, there are some tenets that you have to accept, that you have to be there at your core of your belief. One is that nothing produces everything. David, I see you back there somewhere. Where in science today do we see something coming from nothing? Nowhere. Yet some of these people in science would have us believe that something that doesn't happen anywhere today is how it all got here. They would have us believe that everything came from nothing. And you talk about a headache on that one, but they want us to believe that nothing produces everything. Under that belief, originally there was nothing. At some point, nitrogen and hydrogen appeared in the universe. Also, at some point, there was energy that sparked nitrogen and hydrogen to explode. Big Bang. And two, real quick before I get to two on this one, okay, the one thing they won't try to explain to you is where did the nitrogen and hydrogen come from? You know, they say there was nothing, then there was nitrogen and hydrogen. Okay, so where did they come from? But number two, they would have you believe that if you don't believe in a creator, you also have to believe that non-life produces life. You have to believe that non-life produces life. You have to believe then that the nitrogen and hydrogen exploded, creating more complex molecules which evolved into life-forming cells. Again, some kind of big explosion and all that. I will say this, I don't doubt that there was one point of Big Bang, that's when God spoke everything into existence. I bet it didn't happen quietly. But they would have you believe that all this stuff is sitting there, and then kaboom, everything starts forming. Now, the problem with this thing we just looked at there, Houston, we have a problem. Because this is a violation of one of the laws of the universe called the law of biogenesis. To believe that everything just came out of the nitrogen and hydrogen. And the law of biogenesis states that life comes from, David, life. Yeah. Yeah. Non-life does not produce life. Life only comes from life. So here, they're already violating a basic principle by saying that, well, there was just nothing but gas, and all of a sudden there's a life, all this life, and everything comes from that. So we already have a violation of a principle here. You also have to have as a tenet, if you don't believe in a creator, that randomness produces fine-tuning. Random acts of chance cause life to become more and more complex. Or in other words, you have to be able to believe that order came out of chaos. Or they give it enough time and enough chances, everything exists in the universe found its perfect balance. I wanted to play a clip, but I couldn't find a way to insert it in the PowerPoint video. Christian comedian Mark Lowry does a bit when he's talking about he had a friend who was an atheist, and they came over for dinner. And one of the things he mentioned to that person, he said, to be an atheist, he said, Mark Lowry goes, I would be an atheist if I could have that much faith. And he uses a watch. He was wearing back in a Timex watch. And he looked at his watch and he says, to be an atheist, you have to believe in a similar thing, that if all the parts from that watch were in a bag, and you stood there and shook that bag for 1 million or 1 billion or 2 billion years, that at some point when you open the bag, there's that Timex watch. Not only is it together, it's running and it's on time. And again, he says, I would be an atheist, except I can't have that much faith. And what they want us to try to get us to believe is that all of the order in the solar system and all of the order in nature just happen. You look at the earth and where it is in the solar system. If it's any closer to the sun, what happens? It's too hot. If it's any further from the sun, it's too cold. It's in exactly the right place. You look at, I was reading one writer when I was looking at this, he talks about, look at the system. We produce carbon dioxide, which benefits plant life. Guess what the plants produce? Oxygen, which benefits human life. They want us to believe that all of this happened by accident. And it just happened. One of the things that's always boggled my brain and I could never understand, they would say there was all these rocks and meteorites and they're bouncing around out in the atmosphere, in the solar system. And one hits another. It breaks apart and then it starts spinning and it spins and it produces a perfectly round planet that life starts forming on. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've seen something hit something, it doesn't produce anything cool. It breaks apart. I've never seen an explosion that produced anything other than smaller pieces or destroyed anything. But they want us to believe that everything just happened. And if you don't believe in the Creator, that's what you have to accept, is that it just happened and Earth just happened to, we just happened to park ourselves right here in a perfect place. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they want us to believe stuff that the evidence just says no. You know. And then if you also don't believe in a Creator, one of your tenets has to be that chaos produces information. That things went from a state of great disorder and chaos in the Big Bang to creating a great amount of complexity. And again, like I said, an explosion, only explosion I've ever seen destroys things. But they want us to believe that one kaboom, everything's here and everything eventually over millions or billions or however many years worked its way into a thing of order. And if you ever notice them, the timetable keeps going further and further back because you can't make it fit. But they want us to believe that all of this order came from just utter chaos, which violates the second law of thermodynamics. And we've talked about this. I actually brought this one time in a class, and we were talking about one aspect of the second law of thermodynamics was any system left to itself will eventually fall apart, which is why the world is in bad shape, because God was holding things together. He had to step away when man sinned, and so the earth is now falling apart because God, which kept it together, has stepped away from the system. But it also, what we're looking at here, violates the second law of thermodynamics. And that states that everything in the universe is going from a state of order to disorder. Not the other way around. They want us to believe that everything went from chaos, disorder, to order. When the second law of thermodynamics says, nope, it's happening the other way. Everything is breaking down as it goes. So again, here's two things that they want us to believe if we don't believe in a creator that go against laws that have been pointed out. Yeah. So there are problem issues with believing when you don't believe in a creator. As some of your tenets, you got to accept things that are not quite kosher. For example, our bodies do not become more orderly as time goes on. Anybody can attest to this? But less orderly. We don't get better as we get older. Well, some would say, hey, I did. But in general, our bodies break down as we get older, which fits in with the law of thermodynamics. Our systems left to themselves break down. Things don't get more orderly. You also have to accept as a tenet, if you don't believe in a creator, that unconsciousness produces consciousness. That somehow over time, humanity began to have a consciousness, though nothing like this existed in the past. Where did our consciousness come from? If it came from nothing, there was nothing there. How did we get a consciousness? How do we get morality? It can't come from nothing. You also have to accept that non-reason produces reason. That somehow over time humanity began to be able to think and reason again, though nothing like this was there in the past. That it came from nothing. Some of these things make it hard to believe anything but that it was a creator. You look at some of this and I don't understand how people can actually believe that it just happened. But they've tried to find a way to do it. Now, there are arguments for God as we look at things. How about cause and effect? How about cause and effect? That everything in this world, if you look at it, everything in the world has a cause and an effect. It's unreasonable to look around and think that everything came out of nothing. You look at all that we have. They want us to believe that all of humanity, all of plant life, all of animal life somehow got started out of one kind of little cell, and then it split here and started evolving in this direction, then it split here and started evolving in this direction, and it started here and it evolved in another direction. They want us to believe that everything came out of nothing or one little bitty thing once that somewhere came on the scene. Anybody ever seen a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat? Let me ask you something. Where'd that rabbit come from? Did that rabbit just magically appear? Magically? Or did that magician, while you weren't paying attention, stick that rabbit in the hat? He diverted your attention. He puts that rabbit in the hat and pulls it out. The rabbit did not come out of thin air. We did not come out of nothing. The solar system did not come out of nothing. Everything has cause and effect. There is nothing in this world that we accept as coming from nothing, except everything, if you believe there is no creator. If you believe there is a creator, then you believe that everything came from nothing. But today in the world of science, well, this came from here, and this came from here, and this came from here, but we still can't get how everything got here. Except if you do not believe in a creator, ultimately you believe that everything came from nothing. That it just started, now something comes from everything, but at the very beginning everything came from nothing. Just seems hypocritical to me, doesn't it? That you're trying to say, well, this came from this came from this, but all of this came from nothing. Even evolutionists and skeptics understand this point and argue that in the beginning there was nitrogen and hydrogen. But you know what happens for someone who believes that? You want to really complicate them and confuse them and make them frustrated? Okay. How did nitrogen and hydrogen get here? They believe that nitrogen and hydrogen were here. Okay, so how did they get here? And second point, what was it that ignited them and caused them to explode and caused the Big Bang? Well, that's what you get. Yet there is no explanation as how nitrogen and hydrogen came into existence. They were there. Want to really confuse them? When did time start? When was the beginning? Well, the beginning was 2 billion years ago. Okay, what was there before that? Yeah, then what is nothing? Time is merely a blip on the scope of eternity. Also, physics attests to the fact that there is a God. Did you know that there are more than 30 physical, and David, if any of this is wrong, help me out. Did you know there are more than 30 physical or cosmological parameters that require precise calibration in order to produce a universe that can sustain life? These things have to be just in perfect place. Physicist Robin Collins says gravity is fine-tuned to 1 part in 100 million billion 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 billion. That accidentally happened? One writer said, therefore, of all the places Earth could have ended up, there is a 1 in 36,606 chance that it would be 93 million miles from the sun and thus able to inhabit life. Now multiply 1/366 million by 1/1052nd, and that would be the odds of the Earth being perfectly fine-tuned to this distance from the sun and also having the proper gravity that we don't go flying off the planet. Accidental, remember. If you don't believe in a creator, you believe that's an accident and it just happened that perfectly. I don't know about you, but there's nothing in my life that goes that perfect. The odds of flipping heads on a coin. The odds of flipping heads on a coin 50 times in a row is about 1/10 to the 14th power. If you were able to do it, you would assume the coin was rigged rather than think it was a possibility. And you want to believe that something else with far more expansive odds, they want us to believe that that just happened. Writer said, in the same way, there is evidence that the universe has been rigged, that is intelligently designed and not the product of random chance. And then astronomy, biology, and botany argue for God. The plants produce the oxygen we need. Humans produce the carbon dioxide the plants need. The earth has the perfect balance of water upon it. And it just evolved, or it just spun itself to being that way. The human body, pretty complicated device to just have happened, isn't it? To come in however many million years they want to lobby to come from one cell, you get this human machine. Consider the complexity of the human body. We don't even have to think to breathe, it just happens. We can hold our breath if we want to. And then how does one evolve blood clotting? One writer pointed this out. Blood clots in the wrong place cause death. Too little blood clotting and you bleed to death. Too much and you'll die. How many people would have had to die before this evolution became perfect? And then morality. Morality. If there is no good, if there is no God, where does the innate sense of morality come from? Most people will agree that every person, before they learn of things of religion and faith, have an innate sense of this is right, this is wrong. Now, there are people with issues that don't, but generally every mentally healthy person has a sense of what is right and what is wrong. Where did that come from? Morality without God is nonsensical. If there is no God and there is no afterlife to which I can get rewarded or punished, I just need to live by the law of the jungle, which is the strong survive. Because I should want the best I can get now, and hey, it's all right for me to go to Pete's house, beat him in the head, and take his stuff because, there's no punishment down the road. And then higher purpose. All of us want to know the meaning of life. All of us consider that there is something more to life. There's got to be more. We all think that. If there is no God, then all answers are pointless. If there is no God, life has no value. Without God, life has nothing. Now, a couple of things to understand. We're running out of time. A couple of things to understand. Faith does not contradict science. There are some that will argue it does. Faith does not contradict science. Faith is built upon the science. And there's nothing blind about believing there is a God. The evidence in the universe is overwhelming that God exists. The scriptures also tell us the universe reveals God. Romans 1:20, for his invisible attributes, that is his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen since the creation of the world, being understood through what he has made. Psalm 19, 1-4, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens God has pitched a tent for the sun. Hebrews 11:3, by faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. What is seen was made out of what was invisible, created by God. Isaiah 40:28, do you not know, have you not heard, the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. And then I'm going to skip a couple here. I want to get to a slide. I want to end with a slide with a quote from C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis wrote, I believe in God as I believe the sun has risen, not because I can see it, but because by way of it, I can see everything else. Look around us. The evidence that we need to believe in God is all around us. When you look at the world, when you look at the universe, it just can't be by accident. There had to be some thought. And there's how we get the why I believe in God, because it speaks to us. It tells us. We are out of time, and we will move on to topic number 2 next week.